All right, call to order the July meeting of the local planning agency. A roll call, please.
Mary Albright.
James McPherson.
Susan Moss.
Con Wynn.
Melissa Ozemic.
Jamie Seifert.
And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And could I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I move to approve.
Second. I'll second.
Oops, I don't know what I just hit. I'm sorry. There we go.
And a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
I will second. And are there any public comments not related to what is already on the agenda? All right.
So we have the variance hearing now for a 40-page drive northeast. Before we actually get into the hearing itself, I first do need to swear in any potential witnesses. I know Mr. Gibbs is testifying for the city, and I know some folks will be speaking on behalf of the applicant. Can the applicant stand? You'll have to. And is anyone going to be speaking on your behalf? Will we be calling in friends, witnesses, or?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. If you think you're going to speak, you're going to stand now and swear everyone in. If you think you're going to speak. Okay. All right, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, full truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. And before we get started, I just need to do the ex parte communication check to the board. Has anyone contacted you from the public about today's hearing? If so, just raise your hand. Okay, no one raised their hand, so that means there were no ex parte communications. So, Mr. Gibson, I'll turn over to you, sir.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the board for agreeing to come in with this being delayed a week. Most of the time we don't do a July LPA meeting, but what I do like to do with these ones is, since this is a case regarding a code enforcement case that could be solved through this variance, rather than just letting these things sit there and languish and stuff, go on for another month. I like to try to get these resolved as quickly as we can, and don't want them sitting there for longer. So I do appreciate that. So this is a variance request to reduce the minimum side setback and remove an easement restriction at 40 Bay Drive Northeast. The registered owner of that property is Peggy R. Mitchell. This is in the 7th addition to Elliott's Point subdivision, and that subdivision was created in 1955. When the subdivision was created, there's a statement in there that states an easement is reserved over the 5 feet of each lot line along all interior, reserved over the 5 feet of each lot along the interior lot lines for utility installation and maintenance, including drainage and sewer pipelines and manholes. And so that's really what's created the easement on there, and then the setbacks are just your normal setback standards in there. So on August 17th of last year, code enforcement did identify the carport in question here that had been put up without a permit, and they did create a code case for that item. Basically, when they create these code cases for work without a permit, obviously the first step is always for the applicants to apply for that permit, whether it's going to be approved or not. That just really kind of gets it where we're establishing, okay, is this going to be good or not? The vast majority of them are actually okay, and the permits do go through there. Occasionally they do end up like this, where we're unable to approve the permits based on some issues with them. So on this one, on September 11th, Peggy did apply for the building permit. On the same day, my planning staff denied it due to the fact that it did not meet setback requirements. Initially at the time, we were citing that it needed a 7.5 foot setback because we thought that it was over 200 square foot. Later on, and I'll go back into that later on, it was determined it's under 200 square foot, so the setback is actually 3 feet is the requirement on there. But that's what the initial denial was for on there. A few days later, our GIS department denied it because of the existence of the easement that I just went over. So initially, when talking with Peggy about this, I've been working with her ever since back then. And initially, we were looking that we were going to have to address each one of these things separately. Easements are maintained and controlled by city council. They're actually considered public right there. So in order to get rid of an easement, it's the same thing as the same process of getting rid of a right-of-way. It's called what's called a vacation. It actually goes to them for their final approval, and most of the time they go with whatever Public Works recommendation is on those. And most of the time, Public Works recommends denial, just because right now, there's no utilities or use of that right now, but they don't know what's going to be there 5 years from now, 50 years from now. So they're typically very hesitant to give up access to an easement in there. So the initial approach we thought was that one was probably going to be harder. So rather than spending money on doing a variance and on the vacation of the easement, we were initially just going to do the easement vacation. So that was kind of the approach we'd come up with together on that one. And on January 25th of this year, she did apply to vacate that easement. Around the same time, I was working with Mr. Burns on this one. Because really the problem comes in that there's 2 sections in our land development code that specifically state that you can't build, whether it's an accessory structure or it's also referenced as a carport, you cannot build in an easement. So kind of thought that, well, would it be possible to, instead of doing the vacation of the easement, can we leave the easement there, but then do a variance to the setback and a variance to the parts of the code that says you can't have a structure in an easement? So that way, basically, it could possibly be solved with one action rather than having to do 2 separate actions that are both pretty costly. And so we felt that that was going to be a possible way to do that. Mr. Burns said that, yep, we could actually go ahead and try that approach. And so that kind of brought us to where we're at now, that we were able to do this with just this one variance in here. And on February 20th of this year, she did apply for the variance to the setback and to the restriction from structures being in the easement. As I mentioned, there's 3 sections in the code that are really at issue here. Section 5.1.2.c.3.a states, quote, accessory buildings up to 200 square feet in floor area shall be set back 3 feet from side and rear property lines. And then the next 2 sections are 5.1.2.a.4, which says permanent accessory structures shall not be located within or on any required easements. And 5.1.7.d has a similar language, but it's just specifically for storage buildings, storage sheds, greenhouses, detached garages, and carports have that restriction. Working with Peggy over this, we did get a survey done for her. She did have a survey done, and we got that on May 23rd of this year. And on there, that's where we were able to identify that the dimensions of the carport are 10 foot by 19.6 feet, which brings it in at a total square footage of 196 square feet, which is where initially we were citing the 7.5 foot setback, but then we dropped it to the 3 foot. But either way, the carport was still coming in with the closest to the property line at 0.47 feet. So it is well within that 3 foot setback, and it's obviously well within the 5 foot easement that is listed there as well. So that's where it brings us now to the section 8.2.2 of the code, which states that in order for an application for a variance to be approved, or approved with conditions, the local planning agency shall make a positive finding based on the evidence submitted for each of the following provisions. And the first one is that this is due to the unusual or unique physical shape, configuration, or other physical condition of the development site. This property is approximately 0.23 acres in size and is roughly rectangular shaped with an approximate lot width of 75 feet. It's roughly the same shape and size as many properties in the neighborhood. The house was constructed in 1956 and meets all setback requirements per the current land development code. I will note that this home does not have a garage and did not have a carport prior to this carport being put up, which is a little bit unusual. Next is the literal interpretation and application of the provisions of this LDC would deprive the property owner of property rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district, resulting in an undue hardship. Staff does not believe that the literal interpretation of the LDC would result in a hardship. The requirements for setbacks are enforced on all properties regardless of their zoning district, and the restrictions for easements are even more strictly enforced. Next is the special conditions are not the results of the actions of the property owner, and this structure was constructed by the property owner's brother with her knowledge, and so we do feel that that is due to the actions of the property owner. Next, the approval of the proposed variance shall not provide the property any special privilege that's denied to other development sites, and again, with the setbacks and easements being enforced across the city, we feel this would be special privilege there. Next is whether this is the minimum variance that would result in reasonable use, and as the structure is already there, obviously any less of a grant of a vacation would not be sufficient for this situation, so this is the minimum request. Next is that the approval of the proposed variance shall ensure compatibility of the resulting development with the uses and land character of the adjacent and surrounding neighborhood. Staff did review kind of the surrounding area and has found only one other instance of a structure being built in the easements that were created in 1955. This is for the property immediately to the north of the subject property with a similar carport in the easement. Next is the proposed variance is consistent with the intents and purposes of the requirements of this LDC, and specifically LDC section 1.00.01.B7 states, and that section is the intents and purpose of the LDC. Paragraph 7 states, being equitable in terms of consistency with established regulation and procedures, respecting the rights of property owners while taking into consideration the interests of all citizens of the city. Next is whether this is consistent with the provisions of the comprehensive plan, and staff does believe that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically the goal C, which talks about maintaining a safe supply of good housing in the area and making rehabilitating neighborhoods. So we do feel that is consistent there. Next is whether the proposed variance is not detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and staff does not feel that is an issue. In addition to those sections, LDC section 8.2.6 states that in addition to the required findings set forth in section 8.2.2 of the LPA shall make the following findings when a variance request is in an area of flood hazard. So this, typically your flood hazard area is what we considered are what's called a special flood hazard area. Those are your area, your properties that have a 1% chance or better of flooding every year. FEMA has created a new floodplain called a shaded X zone, and that one has a 0.2% chance of flooding every year. It's a slightly increased chance over your non-floodplain ones. It's not regulatory, but just being cautious on this one, we did go ahead and go through those questions on there as well, just because it could be interpreted as an area of flood hazard or not. Those requirements are that there are no anticipated dangers to public safety from material that may be swept onto other lands, thereby causing injury to others, and we do not feel that would be an issue. There are no anticipated dangers to life and property resulting from flooding or erosions, and we do not feel that would be an issue either. The proposed facility and its contents are not susceptible to flood damage, which, as this is an open structure, it would not be. The proposed facility and services to the public provided by the facility are such important to community, which is not applicable. Next is regarding waterfront locations, which is not applicable. And 6 would be whether there's an alternative location for the proposed use, which again, with this being there already, is not applicable for this situation. Next is regarding safe access to the property, which this would not affect at all. Number 8 is that the minimum required to avoid undue hardship is designed to address the expected heights, velocities, durations, rate of rise, and sediment transport of the floodwaters, which is not applicable for this structure. Number 9 is that this shall not result in the increased cost of providing government services during and after the flood condition, which this would not. And finally, is that this will not have any adverse effect on the city's community rating system. And as I've stated previously in here, I am the Sierras coordinator for the city, and this would not have any impact on that. I will note that, I believe that Ms. Mitchell has multiple people here in support of her tonight. I have also received 3 emails from other individuals who indicated that they were going to be unable to attend, and all 3 of them were speaking in her on her behalf in support of granting of this of this variance. But with that, staff does find that the variance does not meet the criteria outlined in section 8.2.2 of the Land Development Code. And before I go into my recommendation, the one thing I will note that's a little bit different in here is that since this is regarding the easement as well, that easement will still continue to exist even if this variance is granted. So there's one provision outlined in the final order that basically says, yes, the variance is granted. However, if in the future the city does have a need to use that easement, that they can use it and that the structure must be removed at the owner's expense. So that way it just still protects the fact that that easement is there, but it does allow it to stay as a structure per the Land Development Code. The only way around that would be to actually vacate the easement. That would have to go to City Council for them to do that. And with that, based on the findings of fact, staff respectfully recommends the local planning agency deny the variance request to reduce the side setback requirements for accessory structure under 200 square feet from 3 feet to 0.47 feet, and to eliminate the restrictions from a structure being built in an easement. Pending any questions.
And thanks for clarifying that at the end, because I was going to touch on that, to say that because y'all have authority to deal with easement tonight, if you would, in your order, be saying essentially you will grant variance if you decide to do that. Subject to if the easement ever has to be used in the future, they would have to remove the structure if it was ever to be utilized. Otherwise, they would have to go through 2 separate processes to get here. So, but thanks for hitting that down.
And I've spoken with Ms. Mitchell about that. She's aware of that.
Questions? I have one. What's the policy on, like, if this was just not a carport but a covered pad, let's say concrete pad? Can they do that in the easement?
They can. So the restriction is on what's considered to be a structure. And a structure is defined, as you notice, pretty broad. It basically says that it provides shelter of some sort, essentially. And it also gets into what the Florida Building Code considers to be a structure. Like with these ones here, there's been discussions with this one and the one to the north that I mentioned in there as well, about whether or not you could just have like the post and then just like a canvas top or something like that. And that the building code would not consider to be a structure. And obviously, it's just a little bit different. Obviously Florida Building Code's written around, if a hurricane were to happen to come through this year and pick this thing up and throw it, what's the likelihood of A, that it could pick it up and throw it, and B, what damage would be done if it did. Obviously a canvas roof, if it picks it up and throws that, there's little damage associated with it versus actual hard top structure that would cause more significant damage.
So just to clarify, had she put up a canvas shade that you see all over the place, that she would have not have needed a permit. It wouldn't, variances wouldn't come into play or any of that.
That's
because
correct.
it's not considered a structure.
That is correct.
What material is the top made out of?
What's that?
What material is the top made out of?
It's all wood. It's a wood structure.
Okay, I can tell by the picture.
And it's underneath just grass, or is it a porch? Because I can't tell
I
from the
believe
picture
there's
again.
pavers down there.
Pavers.
She'll come up and speak.
Okay.
So,
Any further questions?
Anybody else?
And no, usually for the setbacks, we always consider access to, in case of emergencies and that kind of thing. At this point, there is no setback, so there's no way to access if for some reason, God forbid, we had firefighters or anybody trying to get through that area.
That's not really something we typically would look at in a variance and stuff, because, I mean, you could put up a locked fence right there in that easement, and that wouldn't be that would be allowed, as a fence, because it doesn't provide, it's not considered structured, it's not providing shelter of any kind, but it would prohibit the access back there, so something like that's not something we specifically look at on these.
Okay.
But there are no utilities there.
There are none there right now, no. That easement has never been used since it's been created.
And do you have any questions for Mr. Gibson?
No.
Okay.
We discussed this a lot. I'm just
And if
impressed
you could-
that he knows all those codes. It just flabbergasted me.
Yes.
Good evening, my name is Peggy Mitchell. I live at 40 Bay Drive Northeast, and I'm here to request a variance to the easement and also to be able to leave my structure where it is. And just a little bit of background so that you kind of know me, because I don't know any of you. Actually was reared in Norfolk, Virginia. When my dad retired from the Navy after 30 years, we moved back to his hometown, which was Biloxi, Mississippi. From there, I went to junior college at Perkinston Junior College in Wiggins, Mississippi, got my AA degree. I went on to Delta State University, where before I graduated, I got married, had a little girl, and then got my BSE degree with a major in English and a minor in history. From there, my first teaching job was in a place called Itta-Bena, Mississippi, teaching Title I remedial reading to 7th graders. We stayed there 3 years with that career. Then we moved to Louisville, Mississippi, where I taught for 7 years to students teaching senior English. After that, unfortunately, in 1984, I got a divorce. My mother passed away from breast cancer, so I moved home to Biloxi, and then on a visit to Fort Walton, Mary Esther, where my brother was flying AC-130s at Hurlburt, one of their friends, Karen Davignon, suggested I apply for a teaching job here in Okaloosa County. So I went to Mr. Richard Bounds at Choctawhatchee High School, and he hired me on the spot, which was scared to death, but I'm ever so grateful, because here I am divorced with a child. And I stayed there for 31 years teaching students English, grades 9 through 12. I sponsored the Indianettes, the Wheelettes, the Sailing Club, the Wordsmiths Club, the Academic Team, and an interesting club called the Anime Club. In 2015, I retired with 41 years of teaching. And I'll have to backtrack just a little bit, because in 1994, I purchased this house. My father passed away in 91, and I used some of the proceeds from the sale of his house in Biloxi to afford me the opportunity to buy this house. And this is my pride and joy. It really is. It's something that I've done by myself, with a single mother income, and I really cherish it. And last October, I paid it off, so I'm even more excited. So I proceeded to enjoy my retirement. In 2017, a friend of mine was selling their car, and I purchased my dream car, my retirement car, 2011 red Mustang convertible. And the next few years, I spent my time trying to figure out, okay, where can I let my granddaughters, because they come to visit all the time, someplace for shade, someplace to make their slime, cover my car. And for a while there, I was covering it with those portable material things. I think I went through 3 or 4 of those. They kept blowing off, and then when it rained, you get wet trying to take it off. Then I did purchase some tents, portable garages from Harbor Freight. You couldn't breathe in there for my granddaughters to play, and it also blew down. So then I got the white tent, and before we could even secure it in the ground, it flipped over into my neighbor's driveway. We put it back, and then it flipped over into my front yard. So to me, that wasn't a viable solution. I needed something else, but I put it off. There was no reason. And plus, I didn't have the money. Excuse me. So in 2023, December of 2023, my brother and his friend came to visit. My brother's a carpenter from Biloxi, Mississippi, and he's built his own workshop, shed, almost a house. And I left, I was going on a trip, and when I came back, I found this structure. And if you look at page 2, that's the structure that he created for me. So I was totally surprised, couldn't believe it. And now the girls had a place to play, they had a place to make their slime, and then I found out my car fit, just barely. But it does fit underneath there. I can't back in because there's not enough room, but I can pull it in and basically get it out of the sun and rain most of the time. And so nothing happened to the structure until 2020 of August. And my next door neighbor was having some work done, and she was cited for not having a permit. And the gentleman at the code office took a picture and said, when he saw my structure and saw it in the easement, he just looked it up to see if it was proper. And then they found out that my brother hadn't gotten a building permit, it was in the easement, which startled me because my brother's somewhat of a builder. He should have known better, obviously, but from Mississippi, I don't know. I didn't know anything about the easement, even though I bought the property and it's on our plat map, because I bought it not through a realtor, but through the family that they were children of the lady who owned the house, and those are friends of mine too. So I just thought you can build anything anywhere on your property. You know, you pay taxes on it, so I figured it shouldn't be a problem. But then I was also told, after meeting with the code enforcement officers, Josh Stevens and then Tim and Chris Frasetti and Rich Taylor, that it's not allowed. You know, you can't have anything in there. Even though the city hasn't used it for 68 years, and I can plant thousands of plants and trees there, but I can't have this structure. Logically, that doesn't, I don't understand that. So I painted it, and in Tim's picture, I only had 2 sets of pavers until the hump in the middle. So my neighbor and my next door neighbor's son and I bought the pavers and he helped lay them down. So it's more of a solid thing. It does drain well though. It doesn't catch water or anything like that. And if you look on the survey map, it's really in relation to the whole lot. It's just this minuscule little thing right here. And it also attaches to a side door on my back. It was a back porch and now it's enclosed. So I can get out of the rain, take my groceries in if I put it there. Now there had been suggestions that I could put it I could put it in the back, I could put it in the front. In the front it would block the sun. In the back, it's just too much sand. The cost is really prohibitive. And having it on the side, the house gives me some protection from the wind. Even before I had this structure, I used to park my car there when we had storms because there were no trees there to fall on the car, and the house blocked the wind. In the backyard, there's a major tunnel effect with winds. Nothing bad has ever happened, though, with all the hurricanes we've had and all the storms. So we began the process, as Tim said, in August of 23. And the only thing that held me up or delayed some of my actions was my budget. So in August of 23, I've discovered a leak in the foundation of my plumbing. So I had to fix it. They replumbed my whole house to the tune of $10,000 in a loan. Now my house is paid off, my car is paid off, and now I'm back to square one on a fixed income. Even though it's generous from the state, it's still, I have to budget. I have to budget a lot. So I have to save up my money, which I did, to pay the fine for not getting the permit, applying for the permit and being denied. And then we worked from there. I think it was finally in February, I believe it was February of this year, that I finally had enough money, because I went through, November was Thanksgiving, and we had a big family to do, December was Christmas, and then I was diagnosed with a hernia and thought I had to go in the hospital, which I did, but I didn't have to have surgery. So I'm trying to save up the money to do the variance fee, which was $991 plus the $500 for advertising. And so that was in, I think you said February, I think it was February. And then I finally got a survey, and a friend of mine paid for the survey so that I wouldn't have to fork up $535 more. And I was glad I did, because it really did show a lot more about how small the structure really is. And again, using logic on my part, I still didn't see any problem with it. I guess for me, I'm not a lawbreaker. I pride myself with being a good citizen. Never had a traffic ticket, never had an accident. I don't cheat, I don't steal, I help my neighbors. So I took all of this very personally. Like, what did I do wrong? I'm not a lawbreaker, I'm a code breaker, but I didn't consider myself a lawbreaker. And I do want to take care of it, but I also would like to leave the structure. And on page 3, I believe it's on your packet, page 4, I list all the reasons that I think I should be allowed to keep it. First of all, the city hasn't used the easement in 68 years. If they were to need it, I can tear the structure down, because that's not a problem. There are no power lines, there are no drainage pipes, there's no sewage pipes, there's no environmental issues, there's no wetlands. As I said, if the city needs it, I'll be glad to tear it down and let them access it all they want to. But again, I could put a number of plants there and trees, and that would be okay. But I can't have these 6 posts in concrete. That just, again, my logic. It's not a danger to my neighborhoods. It's a very small, 196 square feet. The structure's not connected to the house. And I think that's probably a viable solution for me, because I just put up gutters. So I'd have to take those down. Again, all the costs are tallying up is what I have to do, whereas it was free, even though my brother got me into this mess. It's like, okay, bro. It's not ugly. It blends in with the house. It's barely noticeable. If you look at that second picture, or maybe the first, you can barely even see it on the side. If my red car wasn't there, you wouldn't even see it at all, probably. There's no drainage problems. The water runs off very effectively, even though the pavers are there. When we just had that deluge a couple weeks ago, it did puddle a little bit, but it drained away quickly. But I had puddles in my street that didn't drain away for 2 days. So the drainage is not a problem. The water doesn't go on my neighbor's yard. In fact, her driveway is raised up slightly, so it doesn't affect hers. It's a very nice neighborhood. I have $1 million houses across the street from me, and while I can't keep up with them, at least I can present a home that's neat and tidy and still afford me the opportunity to protect my possessions. And again, give my granddaughters a place to play, not in the front yard, but on the side where, I can at least see them better. In fact, I'd like to build a fence or a gate or something across the front so that people can't get into my car, because we have had a lot of break-ins in my neighborhood and around Fort Walton recently. As I said, it provides me with shelter from the rain so I can enter the home from the side. And it protects my investment of my car. I assume that that's going to be the last car that I have. I'm 75 years old, and while I know I will make it to my granddaughter's graduations, realistically, my family has a little longevity, and I'm doing the best I can to maintain. But still, I shouldn't have to get another car. That's just my view. And I've seen several structures around town, and I think perhaps those 3 years I didn't even think about mine, because just driving around my street and down a couple other streets in the neighborhood that I frequent, everybody has one of these, or at least it seems so. At least every third house had something similar that was in the easement and right up to the lot line, the property line. I should put my glasses on, I guess that would help. Sorry. And these structures I don't think were as nice as mine. I'm prejudiced. In the interest of keeping our city beautiful, I believe my structure enhances my property and creates value and a pleasing appearance, not just for my home, but for the whole neighborhood. I don't have boats, I don't have extra cars. In that Ferry Park area, we call it Elliott Point, but we say Ferry Park. And Bay Drive is one of the nicest streets in town, it really is. And I want to keep my home pretty, and especially since, as I said, my neighbors have some hoity-toities. And as I said, I haven't had I'm on a fixed budget. I enjoy my home and my neighborhood. I'm a good citizen. If granted the variance, I do understand that the structure will be subject to a code inspection, and I'm very willing to use my building permit that I applied for to bring the structure up to code. I have to save up my money, so I hope the city is patient. I ask you, I implore you, please grant me the variance so that I can leave my structure and just live a quiet existence. Although I have met some really nice people at City Hall and in the Code Enforcement Office, but I'd rather just be a voting citizen and keep my yard clean. Now, the very last page are pictures that I just went on Google Earth, went down a couple streets, and boom, they're all over the place. Now, I do understand, I'm not trying to get these people in trouble, I do understand that in 2012, these people were grandfathered in, or I assume that they were grandfathered in. So I made sure there were no addresses, no streets, nothing of that kind to incriminate them. But as I said, they're everywhere, and that's why I was flabbergasted when I couldn't put my structure or leave my structure there. So I do really appreciate you listening. I hope you will give it a great deal of thought, and I hope you will allow me to keep my structure as is. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions. Anyone? No.
And just if y'all are getting more of these in the future, I think it's a good question to ask. You indicate your next door neighbor does not object to your application, correct?
Oh yeah, no, my next door neighbor does not object.
And
she'll be filing a variance.
Is she in this room?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, nobody objects. In fact, people that I put it on next door to see if I could get some feedback and also some support from the neighborhood. And they just said, what's wrong with it? You can barely see it. I don't get it. You know, so they're with my same logic that it's not dangerous. It's just a simple structure, and I really do wish I could keep it. I really do want to keep it.
Questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a statement because you seemed really upset that you had broken a law. You said, but a code. But I just wanted to say that even builders have broken code before, and they know the code, so don't feel that bad.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't think that it's. I think it's understandable that most citizens wouldn't know they have to, pull a permit for these kind of things. That's not unusual. So I just wanted to make a statement that not to feel bad about it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much.
Do you want to call any witnesses on your behalf?
Sharon, do you want to affirm?
I'm always nice. I'm Sharon Trineri. I live at 42 Bay Drive, so you're going to see me next month. I have essentially the same things to say without being redundant that Peggy has. I do live to the north, so our carports butt up next to each other. So, and I too am a code violator.
You get a lot of those.
I'll hang my head. Quite honestly, I had a lot of work done on my house because my house, like Peggy's, was built in 1955. So when I bought the house, it needed a lot of renovation. And when I applied for the addition to my house, I honestly thought the carport was included in the plans for the addition because it was a fairly substantial addition. And so I didn't even give it a second thought to apply for a permit until one of the code officers came in.
And I don't mean to interject, so, because you'll have your day in court on, so to speak, next month. I guess, do you object to Ms. Mitchell's application?
No, but I have some other things to say, so
Okay.
just hush.
Well, I don't want you to get, say something now that could get you in trouble next month, though. I'm trying to give you a little bit of...
Nothing's going to get me in
Yeah.
trouble even next month. Because this was particularly insulting to me, and I took it personally because I'm on the code enforcement board. Go figure, you know. But anyway, addressing those little tents that she referred to, the little covers, one of them ended up in my yard, and to me, those are far, far and away more dangerous than anything that Miss Peggy put up or that I have put up, because those posts could fly through somebody's window, because these tents were just picked up and carted, 100 yards away. So I think what she has done and what I have done is far and away safer. And as she said, because of the way the houses are positioned, the carports between her property and mine, the safest place to park is between the two houses. So anyway, that I had something else to say, but I didn't write it down, so I'm.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Trenary?
And I don't have, and when she's going to put up when she does her, whatever she's doing, we have no problem between us. We talked before I put mine up because hers was already up when I bought my house. But we were talking about putting a gutter so that, because the deluge, we don't want the dirt to wash out. So everybody's fine in the neighborhood. Everybody's happy with each other. Nobody's upset. So I'm with her. I don't understand the big issue because there's no utility lines. There's nothing there.
Okay.
That's it. Anybody have any question for me?
No, I have no question.
Thank you.
Do you have any other witnesses, Ms. Mitchell? This is do you have any other witnesses you want to call on your behalf?
They're just here an affirmation that I'm doing the right thing and they want me to be able to keep my structure.
Any rebuttal by the city?
No, I'm just a few minor clarification stuff. But I think of some of that just language and things like that. You mentioned that you understand you'll have a code inspection, but they'll actually do a building inspection.
Ms. Mitchell,
So minor things like that, that would be just a little bit different. But we can go over that.
Ms. Mitchell.
Will it be Josh?
Ms. Mitchell, can you come to the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That way you're on
It was
the...
interesting because Josh Stevens came out and inspected my plumbing, and when he did, that was the day that I got the letter, and he explained the first citation with, you broke the code, and it reassured me that the amount of money that they were talking about fining me, $250 a day up to $1,600. I shouldn't be upset about that because I was very upset about that. But he also looked at the structure, and he was concerned about how far the pillars, the posts were in the concrete, and he didn't think that the pitch was correct, and I did read in the code that it has to be 312, so I'm sure I'll have to fix that somehow. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Do I have a motion? I'll make a motion, we approve the variance.
So I second.
Any discussion?
Yep, discussion?
And before y'all vote, just ask for public comment.
Oh, public comments?
Can I just say one thing?
You're a member, she's a member of the public, so she can.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if she wants.
Well, no.
I don't you don't need to say anything else. I think we said enough.
Yeah. Then are we ready to vote?
It's not,
Is that up
it's
yet?
not coming up.
I mean, I haven't clicked the button yet.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, you're okay not speaking, correct? Because we don't want to be.
I'm fine. If I'm gonna get beaten up, otherwise they know where I live.
At least it's told
All right. 5-1, carries. Variance is approved.
Thank you so much.
Supervisor reports? Board member reports? No, nothing. Nothing heard? We are adjourned.
See y'all next time.